Chapter 18: Aspects of the New System. With the influx of committed and enthusiastic immigrants, the country was making great strides under cooperatism, and more attention began to be given to Belgium's relationship with the outside world. Globally, corporations and the financial institutions were still very much in control. This did not present a barrier for the new nation. Capitalist goals and priorities revolved around greater wealth, not around principles. Their principles were always compromised by greater profits. This was one of the tragic flaws of capitalistic democracies. The Belgian cooperative culture began to be seen as financially profitable for many foreign corporations due to Belgium's very minimal production costs. So, ironically, instead of trying to crush this new culture, corporations began looking for advantageous ways to financially exploit it. And this did not, in any way, undermine the cooperativist agenda in Belgium. It strengthened it. It allowed Belgium to maintain open international relations with foreign corporations and through trade agreements increase the funds in its Swiss banking accounts, which in turn translated into international buying power. In the arena of international business and finance, Belgium was viewed by the other players as just another corporation that could be dealt with in favorable financial terms. As an international supplier of refined end products and services, Belgium continued on as it had in the past, doing business worldwide. But as a population of consumers, the Belgian market disappeared almost entirely. Imports were mostly natural resources not available locally. Outside suppliers were very happy to have Belgium as a customer. Belgium would always pay in advance and always 1% or 2% above the going international rates. It did this because it wanted the loyalty of those suppliers. And once the import-export ratio dipped heavily in its favor, it was in a position to easily afford it. Belgium negated all international agreements with regard to patents domestically. If there was a patented international product or idea and the Belgian population could figure out how to reproduce it domestically, they did. And as it turned out, eventually they always did. There was no revenue involved from this replication. It was simply used by the Belgian population to improve their lives. Belgium did agree to never export these patented products without a financial agreement between Belgium and the patent owner. Interestingly enough, such agreements were often sought after by the patent holders and became quite common. It was usually advantageous to partner with the Belgian workforce in the production and distribution of a product. Because of Belgium's zero labor costs and superior work ethic, a patent owner could greatly increase the value of their product by giving the Belgian workforce the rights to mass produce it for international export. The Belgian workforce quickly developed this kind of reputation. It wasn't long before Belgium's exports began to dominate foreign markets. And for a country that had successfully eliminated the money system internally, internationally, Belgium became a financial powerhouse. It strategically began buying up natural resource companies such as those in the lumber and mining industries, giving Belgium more and more control over the acquisition of these valuable commodities. Meanwhile, domestically, whatever could be done to reduce Belgium's dependence on foreign imports was done. The country began to run entirely on renewable power thanks to Cohen Martens. Windmill turbines were built, solar roadways were built, and the entire power grid and electrical infrastructure became state-of-the-art and integrated throughout the country. The agricultural segment was slow getting off the ground. Before the Depression and start of the transition, agriculture in Belgium had slowly given way to industry, and the country relied heavily on foreign imports for its agricultural needs. But now, in this new system, the agricultural industry needed to be revived. Efficient and effective reallocation of the land coupled with the construction of tremendous greenhouse complexes were projects that lifted Belgium's agricultural output to unprecedented heights. The massive greenhouse complexes were technological wonders, modeled after those currently used in Alpha City, but on a much larger scale. They allowed for a year-round, high-volume output of a great variety of produce, even varieties that were normally acclimated to far different climates. Belgium began to harvest some of the richest, most organic produce in the world. It implemented advanced food waste recycling techniques such as accelerated composting. These technologies disposed of waste food without creating greenhouse gases, and at the same time resulted in all natural organic fertilizers. There was also a tremendous infrastructure created for the use of non-powered transportation to accommodate bicycles, skateboards, and rollerblades for those who were so inclined. Many of these routes were designed with enclosed plastic domes for use in inclement weather. The country could do things right and do things that were right. Innovations were credited to the inventor or the discoverer, and then officially and formally recorded by the History and Records segment, securing them a place in the new history of the country's transition. There were no financial rewards, just appreciation, respect, and notoriety. There was a consensual sharing of ideas and knowledge throughout the country. This way of thinking brought about a renaissance of scientific, technological, and industrial renovation and innovation. As progress was made, people became more enthusiastic about making things better and felt fulfillment in doing so. Every idea wasn't innovative or an improvement or even practical, but ideas were flowing and the entire population was involved. Refinements and enhancements in all areas were being designed, constructed, and implemented. Quality of life steadily improved for everyone, everywhere. Elise Claus was Belgium's last prime minister. She was re-elected several times until the role of government became such that there was no longer a need for a prime minister, or a formalized government for that matter. In her memoirs, Prime Minister Claus recalls, quote, "Once the country stabilized and the new system was functioning smoothly and everyone started to settle into their new roles and their new lives, the government went about relinquishing its leadership role. This took years, of course, but gradually the people themselves assumed more and more of the responsibility, just as was the case in Alpha City. It was no longer necessary, as in the past, for a governing body to dictate policies. People knew what needed to be done and got it accomplished. They were well connected and well informed thanks to the incredible online infrastructure that was developed by the communications segment. A great deal of time and effort was put into structuring the workforce and implementing a fair and flexible rotation system. This was considered a key ingredient to the overall success of the system. With an efficient, smooth-running workforce in place, most of what a government was needed for became unnecessary, namely economic issues. When all of the amenities of modern living were being provided for, people could go about living their lives confident that their futures were secure. That was the first major step, and once it was in place, the people could then build on it and enhance it further." End quote. This early first historical attempt at a national cooperatism was obviously very fundamental and unperfected. There were many unresolved issues. The system was finding its way and had many generations to go before it achieved more or less the ideal of what it has become. But it was an effective beginning, and those involved in those transitional times were caught up in the idealism and were therefore willing to compromise on many of the difficult issues for the sake of the system. As the system became more stable and grounded, many of these difficulties worked themselves out within its development, or solutions came from unexpected insights that were often a natural product and growth of the system itself. We now quote from the correspondence of a Belgian immigrant to a friend in the outside world regarding his personal experience of the workforce rotation system. Quote, "You know me, I'm a mechanic, but now I'm putting in some time in the agricultural segment. Agriculture isn't really my strong point, but I'm learning a lot, and this whole rotation thing is certainly broadening me. It's enjoyable and satisfying knowing a little bit about the various segments. You have more in common with more people, widening your friendships with those that you may have never ordinarily come in contact with. I have more numerous and diverse friends than I've ever had. And now, whenever agriculture comes up in a conversation, I can say, been there, done that, and actually have some intelligent input. It has given me a healthy respect for the process involved in putting food on everyone's table. I've worked in the power segment before this, and I really liked it. There was a lot there that overlapped with my mechanical interests. In fact, I'll probably request doing another stint there at some point. I'm finding, sometimes surprisingly, that I have more of an interest in these other fields than I would have thought. I still prefer mechanical work, but I'm far more diverse, and that diversity gives me the ability to enjoy life more, and more importantly, enjoy more of life. There is so much overlap among the various segments. For instance, if something malfunctions with a piece of the agricultural equipment, I, as well as a great many other people, have the knowledge and skills to assess the problem and often make an appropriate repair or adjustment and carry on. And these types of added benefits that derive from this overlap, diversity, and cross-training are utilized all the time in this system. Generally, I'm only putting in about 20, maybe sometimes 30 hours a week in my workforce functions, so I still have plenty of time to hang out in the transportation segment if I want to, or pursue some personal mechanical interest. It can be just as satisfying when someone rotates into the transportation segment without any particular interest there and begins to discover that they enjoy it more than they may have thought they would. It's fun training and working with people like that. The whole system just seems more meaningful and freely accessible. Diversity gives everyone a common ground on which to build relationships. You always have something in common with almost everyone you meet. That is what I consider to be one of the most tremendous social advantages of this system. Now, you asked me about slackers. Sure, there are those who slack off occasionally, even me. We all have those days when it's difficult to get through our shift, even when we're doing something we have an interest in. But the shifts usually aren't that long, and the job isn't forever. And you know exactly how what you are doing fits into the whole scheme of things, and how others in the process are counting on you. People you've come to know, coworkers and friends who encourage and support your efforts and help get you through those days, just like you help them on their down days. And if it becomes chronic with someone, then we openly discuss the causes and try to find a way to remedy it. Sometimes that means re-rotating someone to a different segment because it's just not their thing. This is rare. For most people, this type of incompatibility with a position is not a problem. People chip in and do the best they can and enjoy the change of pace and the learning of new skills, even if they may not particularly be good at them. Worker preferences are always considered and accommodated whenever possible, based on seniority, skill, and need. And for the most part, people accept these rotations and even enjoy them. But in those other rare cases, the system is designed to be very forgiving and flexible. It's not a perfect system. Mistakes are made and problems arise, but that's true of any system. I've only come in contact so far with only one person who outrightly refused to participate in the workforce at all. In this system, there is no forced, legislated, mandatory participation. He's not denied anything because of it, except maybe friends. He is still entitled to all the benefits of the system. He lives for free, just like everybody else, just as if he were over 45, because people over 45 are considered to be retired in this system, except he's probably only around 30. It upsets some people, but for the most part, everyone just lets him be. He doesn't have much of a social life. It seems to me that people don't resent him so much as feel sorry for him. I've only witnessed a few occasions where certain individuals became openly critical and even hostile towards him. But in each instance, others who were more cool-headed jumped in and defused the situation by calming down those who became belligerent, suggesting that they just leave him alone, reminding them that in this system he is and should be free to live as he wishes. He is a very good example of the guaranteed freedom we all enjoy." End quote. And someone else writes this to an outside friend, quote, "The overwhelming majority of the people voted, the people get to vote on actual issues in this system, that everyone at some point should be rotated into the workforce management segment. This segment is responsible for overseeing and implementing all of the day-to-day details of scheduling workforce tasks and projects, balancing and adjusting the various workloads, and assuring that the appropriate number of personnel are rotated throughout the system in a fair and efficient manner. This is a colossal undertaking and requires an extensive and massive database capable of organizing and manipulating tremendous amounts of information. Those rotating into the workforce management segment experience firsthand the complexities and difficulties involved in balancing all of the needs of the workforce, along with all of the requests for the personnel. And this experience gives everyone, and I can vouch for this, a taste for and a healthy respect, appreciation, and tolerance for those who happen to be currently grappling with the mammoth and taxing responsibilities of these positions. It fosters more understanding from people when mistakes are made, and also serves as a very effective system of checks and balances because everyone becomes familiar with how the workforce is organized and how the rotation system is implemented, and therefore how the whole process is intelligently monitored by, in theory, most of the population. Mistakes or inconsistencies can be caught early and corrected. And that's another thing about this system. Mistakes are considered a part of growth and development, not something to be feared or fired for like in the old system. They get corrected. Everyone learns from them and we move on. It's for the most part that simple. There is way less stress. Disagreements do occur and there's plenty of compromising, but it is always in some way a group effort. In many instances where there is considerable disagreement, each possible proposed solution is tried for a period of time so the pros and cons of each can be clearly experienced. Often this leads to a combination of the various proposals, which exceeds the benefits of any single solution." End quote.